Welcome to Ladies in Production podcast, where we talk about animation and VFX production through the female lens. I'm going to put the remote down quietly. Hey guys! Welcome back! So we have a little sickie on Zoom today, but she still wanted to be a part of it.
Hi, Becca.
Aww.
My Kleenex box.
Not
right
sponsored.
Get well soon.
Oh, yeah.
Get well soon, indeed.
Not COVID. Not COVID.
Not COVID.
Not COVID, yeah.
There's other sicknesses in the world besides COVID.
Yes.
We all forgot that. But we're all here. It's a Sunday morning. We're all excited.
Mm-hmm.
What we want to talk about is quitting.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like a big thing right now. The Great Resignation.
The boom.
The big boom. I read an article briefly that said I think like 4 million people quit their job in July.
Wow. In America or in the world?
In America, I think.
That's crazy.
Don't quote me on that because I forgot.
And this is aside from, I'm assuming, aside from like furloughs or anything like that, right?
Yeah, so this was July of 2021 of people quitting. And there's a lot of people who are choosing not to go back because they want to be treated in a specific manner. And, you know, capitalism, you have to feed the machine.
Yes.
Without supply, there's no demand. And if you need...
I mean, even right now, IATSE is going up against the studios because all of the workers on films and TV series who are making all this content that we're constantly absorbing have not been treated right for decades, not having living wages, workable hours, and, you know, a strike is kind of a communal way of quitting to...
Exactly.
So we're
There's
kind of in this
movement.
heated moment. It's a big movement right now.
Yeah, I think everybody took their quarantine time to heart and, like, learned what really matters.
Yeah,
What
I
their
think so.
values are.
Yeah. Where it's like you don't need to be working 16-hour days, you know, to make your living and not see your family. It's kind of like everyone recentered with themselves.
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah, there's more to life, I think.
I don't know if you guys read any of those, like, horror stories that they post on, like, Instagram, where it's like, they make us work 16 hours a day, and then you're, like, driving home, and you sleep for a couple hours, and you have to drive 2 hours back, and you don't see your family. And
I've seen some of those where it's like you get in a car crash and you total your car and you feel like you still need to go into work after having not slept, working, you know, crazy hours. There's an Instagram that just is all of those kinds of, like, real stories of how, or even, like, not being able to go to the restroom when you're working on set for, like, 12 hours straight. Just not having a break or a moment or being able to eat.
Why did we say that's okay to do? That is allowed.
I think it just kept getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
You know, like, everyone just wanted to make more for less, and it just kind of kept getting more and more competitive. And now we're just at this breaking point where it's like we can't take it anymore.
There's like this hustle culture. So I was on another call the other day and people were talking about like, we should be okay with what we're doing in our current roles, and there's this like underlying pressure of this hustle culture that we have to keep pushing and pushing ourselves. And I think everyone's kind of gotten to this point where it's this breaking point, especially mixed with COVID, where you really had to force yourself to slow down and like rethink about what your priorities are and what you actually want as a person.
Our industry had our own COVID breakdown. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, too, because IATSE has a union, but then... And you have a union, right?
Yeah. Well, like, so IATSE is the name of, like, all of the unions. So each craft has their own union. I'm in the coordinators union, but there's also, like, art directors. There's, like, the drivers. There's the producers guild, writers guild. But you guys aren't in any of these unions when you're working in film because you're kind of hired in a different aspect of the filmmaking,
Yeah,
right?
I don't think producers guild is actually a union. It's just like you get screeners and like go to events and have like mentor things.
Well, no, that is a union because they help rates. Like they help establish rates.
Really?
I think so.
So we're the only one who don't get any
Oh,
help.
you know what? We don't qualify because we're new media.
Well, and that's like an issue that
what does
you
that mean?
should somehow.
Like maybe not DreamWorks, but like other places. So like video games. And like digital content, they don't have a union because it's
Video games has always been left out of it, which is a big thing, and that's why like places like visual effects houses that we've worked at, none of those people are union workers.
And you have to be, I think, a production supervisor and above on X amount of movies before you can even qualify.
Well, that's the thing too, is some people get stuck in production supervisor, like, because that's like the non-union title given to someone who's doing a producer's role. And it's kind of unfair because they actually can be in my union, in the coordinators union, and still get like benefits, but they're in like this weird limbo spot where they're not being covered by the PGA or even the DGA. They can't get in, and they're just
what is the PGA or DGA, Ray?
Producers Guild of America and Directors Guild of America. And like all of the unit production managers, directors, assistant directors, like they're all in the DGA. And then, but there are some people who kind of like get lost between the cracks and don't have a union. And like it's like the VFX team. And I think certain members of the post team like don't have a union.
But then like if you're a VFX artist, there's no union for you. But if you're at an animation studio like a Disney, a DreamWorks, a Pixar, there is
there's an animation union. Yeah. There's another one.
But that's for you're not in that if you're in VFX.
How essential is it to be part of union for your career?
Well, so for like in my career, it's like that's how I get my healthcare. So that's why I've always wanted to be in a union, just to get like my healthcare covered. And also it's like they can help you with loans and things like that. Like you can get like, bank accounts set up.
Because you're freelance, so you don't qualify for like a normal loan.
Right. But I guess the importance of unions is like, especially like with like the Art Directors Guild that my brother's in, is like they have established rates for different types of projects, like the starting rate, so you don't have, and we all have to negotiate our deals. So that's like why one of the big reasons unions are really helpful for freelancers is like you don't have to negotiate your deal because there's usually a base, that they have figured out.
They have to pay you, and then that's why everybody's striking.
Well, because in part it's like we've all been paid this much for this long, but like the circumstances are just changing and becoming harder. And it also is somewhat like, because of COVID protocols on set, like things are different with the limitations for safety that are also becoming straining on people too. Yeah. So it's just kind of like they're making adjustments to make everything safe, but it's like, if you're on set, you can't eat anywhere on set because you can't take your mask off. So what happens to the script supervisor who's on set all day? When does he or she get to eat? Yeah. Or the grip or something like that. So that's like one of
rethink how these laws.
I took one of those. I took a COVID compliance class because I was like helping my my friend out a shoot, and like you have zones. So like if you're in like the camera department, you're only allowed to see in a group of people. Yeah. And like you're only allowed to be, so you can't interact with any other teams.
And it's like badges, like colored zone. Yeah. I think that's what it was like on my show too. Zoning. So it's like you're only allowed to be with certain people and you test together, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Is
in certain spaces too.
Pre-vaccine or after vaccine?
After vaccine. It's like how it still is now.
It's insane. I mean, it's great that they're doing it, but I hear it's making other issues.
Well, yeah. So it's kind of like, so this is just like, it's all kind of coming now where it's like we've had like these not great working conditions and they're getting even harder with the health of, keeping things safe.
And then they're like, you should be happy that you're working because you didn't work for 8 months out of the year.
Yeah.
And that's such a horrible phrase to say. You should be happy that you're working. You should be happy that you have a job. That is the worst thing to say to someone. No offense, but
I think that's how it's been kind of always treated or phrased, like, you should be thankful to be in production. And I think it's really, there's this opportunity. Obviously the world and people at large are just thinking about these things now, but I think specifically within production, people are really taking a hard look of like the standards and how this has been done before. I think it's great.
Yeah. And I feel like this movement, as well as like the Great Resignation, is kind of like people finally empowering themselves to quit. Like they feel like they don't have that need to hustle or need to
sacrifice their life and the values that they have.
And Mare's little wrist guards and her body.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do this for the podcast today. It was really achy, and so I wanted to make sure I could prevent it. But yeah, it's like, this is like partially because of my work that I have to do. It's not that everybody deals with it, but when you're at your desk for like hours and hours, you will have pain because we're not meant to be at our desk and not move around.
Repetitive action.
Repetitive action, yeah. And that is one thing. It's like, I value my life where this shouldn't be the case. And that is something that I have encountered of realizing that I need to make a change on that. And I am internally at work.
Well, and I feel like it kind of is like in your mindset where it's like, I want to pick a job that's going to allow for me to maintain this lifestyle.
Yeah. So what actually is great is that I am more vocal about my priorities, my values at work. Yeah. So I will tell them if I have something that I need to work on, I will let them know so they're aware because they can't see me, what I'm doing. Yeah. I'm letting them know that, hey, you know, I am taking a break here and there because of X, Y, and Z reasons, and I will get my job done. But just letting you know, like, it's not going to be on your face, so I want to let them know and be aware that, you know, people might have other obstacles that they need to understand.
Yeah, and I feel like employers are giving the opportunity for employees, or they're trying to give employees the opportunity to speak their mind, because I've seen circumstances where they don't, and that's why a lot of people are quitting. So it's either that corporations or companies have to give their employees the opportunities to speak up, or give them opportunities to have more work-life balance, and if not, that's why we're having this movement right now. I mean, I was
even going to say, just hearing Mariel say that, one of the few jobs that I did quit after I kind of unloaded like all of the issues that I was having that I just didn't feel comfortable talking about while we were working together. Like, it just never felt like there was a place, you know, like to say like, hey, I don't feel like, you know, you're telling me I'm doing a good job. You're just giving me more and more. And, or, you know, certain things like I never felt, or, and it was kind of like after I quit, then they started asking people, are you guys unhappy at work? What's going on? What's wrong? And, like, it suddenly, like, made them aware that we're not all just happily bopping along. And so, you know, they asked my coordinator, and she, like, said all the same things as me and brought up all these issues that she had since the beginning, but she never wanted to say anything. Like, we don't like that our boss keeps his office door closed. It feels unwelcoming. You know, certain things like that where it kind of, like, it's great that you have the space to say it. But I feel like situations where I wanted to quit, where it's when I felt like I couldn't say anything while it was happening, and I would just like cry driving home, just feeling like I was stuck.
Yeah.
Helpless in a way.
Well, it is also a sign that you're doing a good job when they make you do more work.
Like, that's what they would say too. Like,
when they make,
we'll just keep giving you more and
that's
more.
When you know you're doing a good job.
You should feel good that you're already doing this. It's like, thanks. Like
your reward from doing a good job is to get more work, and then those who aren't doing as well
get taken away.
Yeah, it's like you gotta know that's not the reward we want to get.
That's not what we're looking. Of course, like I think all of us are happy to say that we are happy to take on more work because we care about it. Like I mean, maybe it's for myself, but I care about the work I do, and I'd be glad to take on extra work. Yeah. But at the same time, there has to be a balance, or there has to be some reason for taking on that work. You know,
or compensation.
Yeah,
that's a reason.
That's a reason.
That's a reason, and a reason why people quit.
Yeah, and then speaking of quitting, so I'm sure all of us have quit jobs here. I guess my question is, like, when do you know it's time? It's like when you're ending a relationship of any sort. It's like, when do you know you're not happy or you're not doing what you want to do?
I would say, so my example for that same story was like, I was crying driving into work, crying driving home. I remember I like talked to my family about it. My dad was like, just quit. You can always just quit and leave. And I was like, okay, sure thing, Dad. Yeah, I'm going to quit a job.
So much easier said.
Yeah. And then I talked to my therapist, who's not my therapist anymore. She was at the time. And we ended up like screaming at each other, arguing, because she was like, why don't you quit your job? And I was like, what? Like, when you say it, it's like so much more real than when my dad says it. And we ended up having an argument because she was like, why can't you take the advice from me? Or it was like,
what?
It was crazy. It was so bad. She was like, I quit her. That was the last time I saw her. And then like the ironic part was that I ended up quitting the job. Like I ended up taking her advice, even though.
But why is she yelling at you?
Well, like that was so frustrating. I went in being like, hey, I hate my job. I'm really unhappy. I want some tools to get through this right now. Like I feel like I just am too emotional. I need to manage my emotions. And I asked my therapist, like, I want you to give me tools to make work easier for me. And her solution was to quit. And that's why we started arguing. Because I was like, that's not a tool. But then I ended up quitting like a couple of weeks later.
It was a tool then?
Yeah, do you think
Yeah. Well, like I just think it's like.
You don't want that from your therapist, though.
See, that's the thing. It was from
like
the wrong place, and that's when it made me reverse and be like, no, I'm going to stick with this, and I'm going to figure it out on my own. But then I got to the point where I was, like, I just felt so anxious about going into work. And I remember I would be crying as I was walking from the parking lot to the building, like, before I even got upstairs. Like, I stopped wearing makeup to work because I just knew I would be crying. And that's, like, when it's enough.
Was this an industry job, or was it?
It was an industry job. It was like a big studio job, too. So, like, you know, I thought it would be kind of like how everything else was. But it was just something where it was so much pressure coming from different people, no acknowledgement of, you know, doing anything right. So you kind of feel like you don't know where you stand, but you keep getting more and more work and getting micromanaged. Ugh. I think that was also a point, too, is I took a sick day, and one of my supervisors texted me, like, 15 times at, like, 8 a.m. What? And I was just like, I can't do that. Like, I can't live this way. So I feel like sometimes there are just, like, one little push. Yeah, that little instigating.
Puts you over the edge.
It's just like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So I think that was... And then another time that I quit, it was more like I felt like I just couldn't see where I was going at the company, you know, where it was like...
Yeah.
I was, you know, just like we were young, starting out young, and then feeling like, I don't know what's next, and I don't feel like it's here. That was like the other time that I felt like I can
relate to that. I can totally relate to that. I think for me, like, don't get me wrong, no job is perfect. Every job is going to have a political thing, and I think that's taken me some time to just become okay with. You know, I think for the longest time before you get into the industry or before you start working, you're like, oh, I'm going to find the perfect job. Or at least in my mind, I had this like, I'm going to find the perfect job. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to love it. You know, you have this preconception of what it's supposed to be like. And then you get there and then you start, you know, I've been working in the industry for almost 10 years now. And I think I've kind of gotten used to the fact that there's always politics. There's always issues. There's always people on your team you don't like, you know, and whatnot. And I think I've kind of started to let certain things like that go. But what I think has really kind of been kind of the North Star for me, or when I've decided like whether I should stay at a job or not, is when I kind of hit a glass ceiling, or I hit a ceiling. And I feel like there's no more opportunity for me to grow within that company. The previous places I had worked at had been a lot smaller, which I love, and a lot smaller teams, but I felt like I got to a certain point that either the leadership or the executive support or team, there wasn't opportunities for me to make that next step, skill-wise, position-wise, whatnot. And what's been interesting for me is in the current role that I'm in now, I've had a lot of ups and downs in my current role, various things. And there's been a lot of times where I got to a point where, like, should I even go through with this? Like you, Ray, describing, like, I was upset about stuff, like anxiety around stuff, different situations. And I kept thinking, like, there's opportunities here. I got to see this through. Yes, I got to push through it. Somehow I got through all these different situations. But I think ultimately thinking about there's opportunity here and I got to stick it out has ultimately kept me around at the current place. And so that's kind of been my path. There's a lot of times where I think about, like, oh, I can't do this anymore. Like, I don't have the energy to do it anymore. But I think I kind of always have to take a step back and say, okay, this is always going to exist. Look at the company I'm at. Look at the opportunities I have.
The bigger picture.
And the bigger picture, and kind of just kind of stick it through. And, you know, for me, some days it's very dreadful. Other days I'm like, you know what, I got to put energy elsewhere. And so that's kind of been my mantra, or way of thinking about, like, I just got to stick it through and things will kind of work out. So that's kind of been my determination on when to quit or not.
Your reason is kind of similar to mine too. Like, within this industry, I've worked in different studios as well. And I think one of the things is that, is there anything else for me to, like, grow within the studio? And if I hit a wall on it, then, you know, kind of look at it, well, how much does the company value me versus, you know, also, like, how much can I put more value to the studio? And if I do reach a wall or hit a wall, that's, I think, where it's like a calling for me, and seeing, like, the bigger picture of, like, where can I find myself where I could be more valued.
So what are the walls that like both of you, like what kind of walls
Yeah.
or obstacles are those things?
So example will be when I was at a studio working on a project, we were in a crunch and working maybe like 60 hours a week or even more. And it was a lot of hours, but it was so much fun. It was fun. Like the days went by so fast. And then when I did hit a wall, oh my God, it was the longest 40 hours. Like I was dreading. And then like just the enjoyment of going to work was not there anymore.
Is it a growth wall or was it an enjoyment wall?
Growth wall.
Okay.
Growth wall.
For me, growth wall as well. Because I mean, there's plenty of days that are not fun. You know, there's always things that are not enjoyable or whatever you have to deal with. But I think every single time I've kind of looked at the landscape, you know, of positions I can move into, and if there's no opportunities for me personally of like, okay, this is the next step I can take. If that doesn't exist, then I know I've hit that wall.
See, that's interesting because I feel like, you know, that's similar to like promotions, like, you know, knowing when you want to get a promotion. But like for me, I'm in a place where I don't have like a direct next step that I'm looking at, you know, and I think that's just different with our types of jobs that we do too, because it's interesting hearing.
I think it's different. I think it's for jobs, but it's also based on an individual. Like I was talking to someone else the other day, and I think there's always this like the hustle culture, like I was saying before. Like in our mind, we've been taught that you have to hustle for the next thing, and it's totally okay to be okay with your current role and your current job for the rest of your life.
Yep.
You do not have to move on to the next step. You do not have to manage people. You can totally be an individual contributor and be happy with it. And I think we've been taught in society that you have to continue to hustle and move to the next thing. And so I think you just have to ask yourself that, do you want that?
But
you know,
is your, okay, yeah. I kind of get that because, like, I did come to a place where I was, like, I felt like I kept needing to look for, like, what I need to do next, and it made me really unhappy.
It's like this. We're kind of, like, going the structure of, as a student, going to the next level.
Yeah.
You're, like, the guidance counselor. You know, you're in the same level, but you're always experiencing something different.
Right, because, each of my shows are so different.
Yeah,
Mary and I will get stuck doing something.
We're always taking
over
algebra.
and over.
Yeah,
and it's
like we want to take the
endless.
we want to take calculus, but we're always taking algebra.
And I want to take calculus.
You can grow in your career in so many ways.
Yeah.
Like growth doesn't have to be demonstrated by moving into a manager role or a leadership role.
Yeah.
Growth
But I
could
was
be-
wondering, like, with the feelings that you guys weren't able to grow, was it, like, the people you're with, you didn't feel like they would help you grow? Were they the walls? Or was it, like, the actual
I could talk
situation
about
of the job that you feel like you weren't going to grow there?
Here's the thing. I worked at a studio where I had to create my own role. As the promotion happened around, it's like, you have to develop what this job means.
What you're doing.
Yeah, what I'm doing. So I created that. It was very successful. But now the next step was that it was the people that couldn't provide me what the next step. Yeah,
right,
and
okay.
they couldn't provide me, then I didn't have
Any
the door
incentive to stay.
to open and create another new
Gotcha.
one. And
you need to advocate.
Not when you have to move.
People to advocate for you.
yeah.
If
If people aren't willing to be open arm about creating a new one, or
Or
growing,
aren't clear what you can do to move up.
yeah, you don't know
Exactly.
your limits, then I think, or if you feel like you have a limit right there, then I think it's a calling of like, it's either you're comfortable with this position to keep going with this, but for me, I wanted to grow more. Like I felt really.
Yeah, and then like for Mary and I specifically, like once you're in, like we're not senior air quote because we're not like producers, but there's like there's a range of pay, so you'll get stuck in that range, and they won't push the range because then they're like, oh, we have to do it for other people. But since you're freelance, you kind of bounce around, so you're naturally getting that raise every try to so often. But for like for us, you could be at a company for 5 years being that role and get 3% every year.
Oof.
Yeah.
So then you're basically locked into this role and rate. And if you're happy with that rate, that's fine. But I think that's why producers get happier.
And I guess that's different for me too, in that, because
You're not staying somewhere all the time.
Essentially, money is a huge part of reason why we're trying to grow, because that is how
That's the way
relates to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's like, especially for production, there's like once you move from being a PA to a coordinator, you get a little bit more money. When you move from a coordinator to like an associate producer or whatever, PM, whatever, you get a little bit more money. But that jump from PM or associate producer to producer rate is exorbitant. Like you can almost double your salary just by making that move.
Yeah, based on how you moved around or if you stayed in one studio, the jump could be like you could have a whole nother life with that money. That's just how much change it is that we're always trying to hustle to grow there. I mean, essentially, yeah, it's that. Also, you get a lot of respect being in that leadership, right?
And you get a lot of not respect when you're in that.
Which is another reason to quit.
Yeah.
Feeling like you're not getting respected.
Valued.
Yeah, valued. I think that's a big thing for all of us.
But I have a couple reasons to quit. I actually did quit. I'll just probably speak more to like my current experience and why I left versus other ones. So I feel like you guys touched on that, like not I have the anxiety, not wanting to go to work. But for me personally, I felt like I was stuck. I wasn't going to move up for at least 3 or 4 years. I didn't feel like I was getting like supported in any way. I felt like forgotten, like a little lost child. And I also don't like corporate. I realized in the year that I was at my last job that I like knowing that what I'm doing is like directly benefiting like someone that I can like encounter. Like
more personal.
It's even like I'm working hard and then I know the person who's benefits. I don't want to. This is stupid capitalism, but like it's better for me to like know that my work is getting funneled to a person rather than a corporation who's doing stuff that's like against my interests, like politically, socioeconomically, whatever have you.
You want that direct hands-on, like communication. With
It
the
was
people.
just too much. It was just a lot, and I couldn't handle it anymore. And I was just like, I need to leave. I was putting feelers out, but for me, my whole interest in making the switch was like, am I happy? Do I see myself here long term? Like, what are the pros and cons? And I think that was like something that Mariel and I talked about like every day for months.
For like a year.
A year.
She started the
We're
job.
just like talking about like, because we both had very different experiences at the same company. So I'm like, is it just me? Am I the only one who feels like this? And it's like, some of us weren't sipping the Kool-Aid, so we weren't getting that.
And you want to have an objective discussion rather than being subjective. It's just you need other people's opinion, but someone who's in the same pool as you.
Well, then, someone who has shared knowledge, because it makes it a lot easier, and that's when you find your friends and your allies.
Then you don't have to explain things. It's just what it is.
But how else have you guys made this switch? Like, formulated a thought if it wasn't necessarily a trauma?
Well, I feel like what you're saying... Oh, sorry. I was just thinking also what you're saying is the feeling of being trapped. I feel like that's something I felt too. Like, that's a common reason to want to quit too. Is like when you feel like you're stuck or you're like a victim, you know?
I wasn't even like victim. Is like, I know that so I'm going to work on this project for 3 years, whatever. And then I'm like, okay, I'm new, air quote, in that 3 years. I'm going to have to basically do 2 or 3 more movies or whatever before I even get thought to move up. Do I want to spend do I want to be
You're looking
in
at
my
the bigger
mid-30s doing the same job that I did when
And I think that's a very valid question because I think a lot of people will be like, oh, but this is how people climb the ladder.
Yeah, this is
the way.
Steps.
And so this could be quote unquote the safe way too. But then you got to really look at the bigger picture of how Becca and Sav did and ask yourself, is this what I value?
I also don't think there's ever a safe way in entertainment. I feel like you always have to kind of find your own path too.
You have to keep thinking about what's the next step. I think for me too, the reason why I would quit now versus when I was in my 20s is I think when I was in my 20s, you're looking for new opportunities and experiences. You don't have a lot of years under your belt, so I jumped around a lot to places a little bit more frequently just to get more opportunity, networking skills under my belt. And now the mindset is more about stability. I'm in my 30s now. Don't have kids yet, but eventually we'll have kids. And those are like top of mind for me of like, where do I see myself really settling down? Where do I see myself growing in a way that's secure, in a secure environment?
Here's oh, wait, sorry. Or did you want?
No, that was it. That was.
I was gonna say, here's the thing. So I just recalled what you said in the beginning of our conversation is that when we get into this industry, we have this huge vision, fantasy of like, I'm gonna get that job and I'm gonna stay here forever because I love what I see. And then once you get into it, you realize, holy cow, there's a lot of other elements that you never encounter, never even thought you would encounter. So you start re-evaluating what is your life is gonna be. And for myself too, I had the exact same thing. I was like, got into this industry. I got into a studio that I really dreamed about, and I loved it. And I was like, this is exactly what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Well, shit comes around, and you're like, life is kind of different now. And I had a moment where I was like, it was the hardest quit ever because I didn't want to quit because I wanted to, but I had to for the sake of my health, my life. I was on a verge of like, am I really going to sacrifice my life, like my life coming to death for this company? And
life coming to death, you mean your body being in pain and you not having time for your freedom?
Yeah, I just
want to make sure it's not...
we could say work-life balance, right?
Oh, yeah, here, redact.
It just was like sounded really bad.
Life coming to death.
I mean, you were not in great condition, though.
That's how you felt. I just want to make sure. Yeah. I felt the same way, too.
Hey, I'm
at the same
real.
time as you.
We have people who died in this industry because they worked so hard.
Yeah. Well, that was like another thing with the IATSE. There's so many heart attacks that happen, from all the stress.
I had so much. I had like 26 having high blood pressure because of my job. Like, that's not normal.
It's not healthy.
No.
It's like our bodies are telling us.
I took like a day off to go to the doctor. I went to the doctor. God. Ozzy and I went to the beach. I wanted to sit in front of the beach and just have a minute. This was like peak pandemic. I just need to get out of my house. I'm trying to enjoy the beach. I have a client calling me, yelling at me. I have the editors calling me, yelling at me. And I'm like crying on the beach because I just want to sit and like my heart's racing and I'm like getting dizzy because I'm like, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's not, I'm not saying.
I'm like 26 years old.
You shouldn't feel that way.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say though, like my team has been amazing. Like I looked at my calendar around that time and seeing like how many times I had to go to the hospital and how many times they were so supportive. And again, it's not like my median team's making it. It's the corporate. Like, it's the situation that they can't physically see, like, the stress that we're going through during this pandemic or pre-pandemic. And I think that's one of the things is that corporates are very different. We're all just, numbers. There's pros and cons to that. But that said, when I decided that it was the hardest decision because I didn't want to do this, but I had to quit, everyone who worked with me totally understood and they respected my decision, and I was so glad and relieved to hear that because I was so sad.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, one person came up to me and said, I see you can't handle the stress that we have for you.
Oh my god.
I was just speechless. I was
heartbroken.
Like, did you not hear anything I said? Did you not hear anything my team said?
Well, how that they continue to enjoy
like
their life the way they want to live it,
Yeah.
Some people like that. Some people like working in that.
Or they tell themselves that. I think that's the thing is like, or at least this industry or society has told us that those things are okay. And so people start to convince themselves that things are okay. But I think there's this incredible movement, at least our generation's like rethinking about like, is this okay? Is this actually like what we should be putting ourselves through?
Exactly.
No.
So what I want to say is that if anybody out there is telling you that,
it's not normal.
It's not you.
Oh wait, I have one
if
too.
they're telling you to make themselves feel better, honestly, they're telling you because that's how they functioned.
Yeah.
So when I quit one of my jobs and it was the dramatic ending that, turned into everyone complaining about all the problems they've been having, one of my bosses was like, you can't quit. You can't leave us. You can't leave the family. And just like made it so personal.
If they say it's a family, leave.
Yeah.
Run.
And I was just like.
You have your own family.
He took it so
make your
bad. Yeah.
Try to make your own.
Make your own family.
Oh, because that was like the thing too. It's like actually having to have the conversation, like, I knew like that morning I told the first person I needed to, and then she set up the meeting to tell the two bosses, and it was like at the end of the day it was so dramatic, and I ended up having to tell them all of the reasons. I was like, you never tell me if I'm doing a good job, you give me all these things to do, this guy's always on me, you never did the just like Oh,
Yeah.
that's to be, because before I was like, I had a great opportunity. It's a move up. That's why I'm leaving.
And then you want to leave on good terms.
Yeah.
Like, you want to not
be
burn
on like
any
a
bridges.
positive end. But then it just became so personal and emotional.
So this
like,
is the pros and cons of working in a big corporate and a small studio, is that they're so dependent on you because you're taking away a leg of a table.
Is that what you say? I don't know.
That is what it's like, though. It's like taking away a leg of the table,
Lopsided.
like while you're still trying to move. Like how about taking a wheel off of a car while you're still trying to drive, and you can't keep driving
They're
without
so
it.
essential.
I think my first industry job that I quit was so dramatic. Like me and the HR were both like sobbing for like 30 minutes.
Oh my
But it was like my first job, and like she was like my surrogate mom, and like it was just like
And that's a hard way to leave.
love there, but it was just it was a lot of dramatic.
I want to leave like that.
No, you don't. You want to just be like clean.
I cried so many times. I cried when I got my stuff. I cried when I was talking to the CEO when I left. He's like, "You'll be back, Savanna." I'm like, "Fuck you, I'm not coming back."
You know what? I feel like it's always better to leave wanting more, or you want to leave when people want more from you. I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Leave when you're on top.
Yeah, and I think for me personally, like the past year, I've noticed like loyalty means nothing anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like you staying somewhere doesn't mean that you being loyal to a company doesn't mean they're going to be loyal to you, unless they are, and it's great. But I would say most of the time, you're not getting a reciprocation of that loyalty.
I feel like you can get it with people, but not with companies, right? More so, like if you can have the loyalty of the people who will keep hiring you back, but not necessarily the company.
And
I value the people.
Yeah, I would loyalty to the company. Yeah, that's correct. But like, I would say be loyal to yourself when you're making these decisions.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
At the end of the day, they could have fired you instead of quitting, and they would have had a plan, and everything would have been fine. You just inconvenienced them.
That's
briefly.
the thing. Yeah, the thing is that when you quit, you feel guilt because you're like letting them down.
But you feel bad because of your teammates, not the company.
Yes. But the thing is, the reality is that they will able to survive without you.
Yeah.
So you don't have to feel bad about it. Like, you should feel good that you're doing this for yourself.
Yeah.
I think I said this quote before, but it was how a producer on Titanic said, like someone was interviewing him and saying like, crew members are dropping like flies. Like, how do you respond? And his response was, get more flies. And that's why I think like, you just quit because they'll get someone else to replace you.
My dad said
one of those flies.
Yeah, he said that people would just be like, they would sleep under their desk, they would pass out in the hallway. That's
what I'm saying, life and death.
Yeah.
Except thank God we're in a better generation.
Mariel's Catholic now.
I mean,
Oh, praise the Lord.
But I think like just back to like feeling guilty about leaving. I think, how do you actually quit? Because I know Becca and I were kind of talking about this before we started recording. It's like we're both such people pleasers that you like feel so guilty. And like I know that when I quit like when this is recorded like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and I was like, I had a mental breakdown. I was freaking out. Like I didn't care. Like I didn't care about quitting. It was just like I have to tell someone. I have to like talk to people, and they're gonna like.
I always feel guilty about it sounds terrible, but all the work that the other people are going to have to take care of. But I think that goes back to the point that Mariel and Ray were just saying, is it's up to the company. Yes, it's an inconvenience to them, but ultimately that's the company and corporation's responsibility. Like, of course we need to keep remembering that, but it's so hard to look at your coworkers, the people who have supported you and the people who like you've worked together and stuff.
You guys cared. You guys cared.
About the people.
So
yes.
much.
Yeah,
Yes.
I remember told someone they they just screamed, literally screamed.
For what?
I'm quitting. He's like, what? And he just screamed, and I was like, he's like, are you joking? I'm like, no. And I was like, I mean, everybody was happy for me, but it was just like, it was like surprising.
Yeah.
Well, here's a question then. After you told him, how did you feel? All that anxiety of like, oh my gosh, I have to tell, and then...
I felt anxious until I told everybody that I needed to tell.
Did you? And was it as big as you thought it would be?
Yeah, but I'm dramatic.
Yeah.
It was as big inside, not to other people, but inside my body it was a lot. It was very dramatic inside. There was a storm going on. I mean, you saw me.
Yeah, but also,
I was at your house.
You were anxious, but then when it actually came down, like, I think you had multiple sessions of, like, telling that you're quitting.
I had to tell
but then
6 or 7 people.
Yeah. Individually?
Well, I mean, I had to tell, they don't tell people, so you have to tell them.
Okay. Well, I'm like, it wasn't all on a call. You had to like call each of these people.
Oh,
and
You
say,
have to like mentally prepare yourself.
I literally
for it.
called, like, I had a call with one person. I emailed HR because I was like, I don't care about you. You don't care about me. Then I had all the people that I'm close with that I wanted to tell.
Oh, that's
in
a good
person.
tip. Is that you should before you tell the person who you should tell, you tell your close colleagues, so that
Like
they
your
don't hear
really,
from
really
anyone
good
else.
ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the people you really care that you should tell directly, because
Yeah.
if they hear from someone else, it's
Also,
And then do you guys advise telling your boss first and then HR? Like how have
that's what
you?
I did. Yeah.
yeah.
And I emailed HR because I'm like, there's no good
No, there's
conversation.
no ties there, but you
Yeah.
need. I think that it's respectful to tell your boss
Yeah,
in
in
person.
person,
Or
yeah.
virtually,
Yeah.
you can't. HR email is usually okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're close with your boss too, like they will completely understand.
Yeah. And if you're a chicken like I am, sign the offer letter so you like actually have to tell them.
That's a good point. No,
Because-
that's actually
What's an
That's what you always want
Oh,
to do.
you
You
want
don't
offer
want to
letter?
Yeah, what do you mean?
the offer
Some-
letter with the next company. Like you
They'll
don't
give
want
you
to
like a document and be like, this is your pay, this is your salary. Like,
Oh.
Yeah.
they'll give you this paper.
Like on
and it's-
stationery?
Yeah. Well,
Like an
It's
official...
like a contract.
Yeah, it's a contract.
Oh.
Like you're
Contract.
officially getting that job, and like you starting that job.
And you... Okay.
So then you sign it, and then you're like, shit, I have to do this now. So now there's
Yeah.
like
Pressure.
you pressure to actually do, because like I think I waited a week because I was too scared,
And then there's a deadline because you want to give the 2 weeks advance.
Yeah.
which is also bullshit, but that's
That's out of courtesy.
courtesy. But they don't
That
give
is
you that
courtesy.
courtesy when they
I
fire
do
you.
that. I do that in courtesy. I've even done longer than 2 weeks.
Yeah, me too.
because the guilt comes into play.
Yeah.
I think the worst one was I offered to work free overtime after I had quit on the weekend because I felt so bad.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Never
No.
do
Don't do what
that.
Savannah does.
Never do
No.
that. You
Do
don't
what I
owe
say.
the companies
But-
anything.
I think it's good. I think it depends. And yes, don't do that.
Don't do what I did. I was
Don't do what you
stupid.
did. But I think one comment that I got from my supervisor after I told the company that I'm quitting is that she was telling me how thankful she was that till the last day I actually cared about work.
Yeah, you
keep working.
If you want to leave on a good terms, and you want to maybe at some point come back.
Or maybe work
nice.
with those folks.
Work with
Yeah,
those
work with
people.
those people again.
Yeah.
It's a small
Don't burn,
community.
don't
there.
burn.
It's a
Yeah,
really
don't burn
small
bridges.
world
People
to-
definitely know when you give up and you don't care anymore and you stop trying.
Really
Yeah.
don't burn bridges.
Don't burn bridges. Or try not to. There's some bridges are meant to be burned.
It
Some of them are
happened.
crusty and broken down, and you don't want to work with them anymore.
But you know, sometimes like that job I quit with the two bosses, I ended up working with one of those two bosses last year
I
again.
forgot.
Well, we talked about it. We
Oh.
were just, he was like, "What was the problem?" Because he ended up leaving that show too, and a lot of people ended up leaving that show.
yeah.
I was just the first, but once it was kind of like he really understood why I left, and it wasn't him.
Yeah.
We're able to work together again because this community is really small. You're gonna keep bumping into the same people.
Yeah.
I never thought that I would work with Mariel again after she left our first job, and then we worked together for a year, and then I left her. But it was revenge because you left me the first time.
I got your point, Savannah. We'll see each other again someday.
Maybe.
Hopefully.
Probably.
I mean,
not.
right here, you see each other.
I changed.
I have hope, okay?
You want to join me in marketing?
I don't know where life is
I
going
don't
to
either.
I feel like our paths will cross at some
Well, I
point.
mean, we hang out all the time, so and we're not
True that.
going anywhere. I go to your house
Yeah. That's true. You
I-
come to my house more often now.
because I have more free time. Well, I feel like this was great.
So
I
we
feel very-
encourage anyone
to
who
quit.
Yeah.
Do it.
If you're not feeling happy in your situation, it's empowering. It's not failure. Like, growing up, my family let us quit anything we wanted, like any sport, anything, because my parents were like, we don't want to fight you for it. So quitting was always just like, it's okay. But then, you put the pressure on yourself
Yeah.
that it's failure.
And maybe we say resigning because we're not quitting.
Okay.
We're
We're not-
resigning.
yeah.
So resign. Feel free to
But
resign.
maybe have a job lined up or have money saved up.
Just be responsible when you resign. Look at the bigger picture.
But if it's really
Plan it
toxic
out.
and you're like miserable,
Plan it out, yeah.
then
Yeah.
if you're
Don't be reckless.
but if you're like literally about to have a mental breakdown, then
or if
I
you're
would say quit.
in and out of the hospital.
Oh, okay. Well, also, talk to your team. Maybe there are things that could work
Yeah,
out.
talk to them first, and then if you feel like there's nowhere to go, then be like,
Exactly.
peace out.
Exactly.
Girl
Yeah.
Scout.
Try to make it work.
Try to make it work. Yeah, especially if you like that place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always have to work. That's just my thing. Try to make it work, but don't feel forced.
Mistakes are only lessons you learn, you know?
Can't fit a square peg in a round hole.
Very true.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Well,
That was great.
quit your jobs. Bye.
Resign.
Bye. For more information, follow us on Instagram at Ladies in Prod Podcast, or you can email us at ladiesandprodpodcast@gmail.com.